There's also more fallout over the Trump administration's double-tap boat strike targeting drug traffickers. Some Republicans and Democrats have seen the full video of the attack, and the reaction is breaking along party lines.
I think it's really important that this video be made public. This is an instance in which I think the American public needs to judge for itself.
I personally don't have any problem with it. It's not gruesome. I didn't find it distressing or disturbing. It looks like any number of dozens of strikes we've seen on Jeeps and pickup trucks in the Middle East over the years.
General, this is going on week 3 of this story. There has been briefings on Capitol Hill. Do you have any insight as to how that went, and will the questions about this get resolved this week?
Yeah, well, I think the video, from what I understand, was pretty fact-based and pretty understandable once you see it in video form like that. But I understand the reaction that people can have when they see a target like that, obviously helpless to a certain degree. It's not different than Republican, Democratic presidents who authorize strikes on land at isolated targets, and it's complete chaos after, a bomb hits a group of people. The survivors are trying to help each other. They're trying to save lives, etc., and we reattack. And we reattack because of who they are and what they represent. And we made the decision to stop that organization from doing harm. And that means we're killing the members. Here we're trying to kill the members and also the boat. And I understand how that, when you look at that, you're not used to dealing with something like that, it can be a little shocking. I understand. We're humans. We have values. But when you're in war, it is about death and destruction. And it's not for the faint-hearted. And we have to have some spine to make these decisions, and these strikes were authorized. And then we have great people who can exercise that and not give up their values as Americans or their values in the armed forces. They are executing legal orders that have moral clarity to them, frankly. We're killing people who would kill and do harm to the American people. And that's what this is about.
General, thank you for that. I also want to get your take on this because these talks between Ukraine, United States, and Russia continue circling around Europe as well. President Trump had some comments about the situation. This is from last night.
So we've been speaking to President Putin, and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including President Zelensky. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it.
And then Donald Trump Jr. said this. It's getting a lot of attention this morning.
Because of the war and because he's one of the great marketers of all time, Zelensky became a borderline deity, especially to the left, where he could do no wrong. He was beyond reproach.
But is your hunch that President Trump is going to walk away?
I think he may.
So we are still waiting some sort of resolution on here. How do you size this up at this moment?
Well, the fact there's negotiations going on, that's a good thing. And obviously they're still taking place, despite media reports that it was all shut down. So that's very good. And I have spoken to Ukrainian leaders, and I know they're deeply involved in this process, and they certainly are talking to their president about it. I would imagine that one of the things that's being discussed, for Zelensky to sign a deal, he has to have some pretty specific security guarantees in place to sign anything to make certain that Russia doesn't reattack. We know what Putin's objectives are here, and that's to topple the government in Ukraine and take control of the country and expand into Eastern Europe. He has not given up on those objectives. He would look at any deal that he makes as temporary in his mind and looking for the opportunity, likely when President Trump leaves office, to be able to re-engage. That means that the security guarantees and how Ukraine gets protected on the ground and in the air and at sea, obviously with military capability, is absolutely paramount to this deal being a good deal, because the country needs to be protected, and then we have to upgun Ukraine. This is so when we have a deal, and help rebuild and reform their military, make certain that they can begin to stand on their own, quite frankly, and there's things we can do to help them. So good good thing here. Negotiations are going on. We may actually get an agreement out of that, which remains to be seen. And I'm still optimistic that possibly something positive can happen here. The problem with Putin is once we tell him that we have to have strong security guarantees in place, which means forces on the ground, in the air power, and at sea, he's likely to object because he has in the past. We'll see. Maybe he is of a mind to finally make a deal. And certainly that's what we're hoping for.
Well, we're right to be cynical, I would imagine, just based on our experience. Thank you so much, General. Have a great week.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.